Hey, welcome to Paint It Friday, and we are going to be making stacked pumpkins. And I am using cold pressed watercolor paper, and I have my watercolor paper taped down with painter's tape, and that is just so I can keep it in place. And right now, I am just doing a freehand sketch. And as you can see, I am just sketching some oval shapes. I'm going to be doing three oval shaped pumpkins. Right now I'm just sketching the oval shapes. I'm doing the larger pumpkin on the bottom. So I'm just kind of just sketching that pumpkin there. We'll put the ribs in later. Well, I'm doing some of the rough sketching of the ribs going around there. So follow along as you'll see what I'm doing here. And don't worry, I will darken it up a bit so you'll be able to see it. But actually, let me just back up a bit. I am using, I started off with a 9x12 a sheet of cold pressed Canson watercolor paper. I tore that sheet in half, so it's a half sheet of a 9x12. I always work in half sheets as a rule because that's just how I roll. You can paint on whatever size sheet that you want, but I do use a 9x12, and I will also be painting with a number 2 round brush. So there you go. Now I'm working on the second pumpkin. And once again, I'll be doing another oval shape. And like I said, I'm just doing rough sketching right on the watercolor paper, which is why I'm not doing any sketch at Tuesdays, because we're just doing it right on the paper. And guess what? That's what erasers are for. You can see I have my pink eraser sitting up there in the corner. And I just use a regular eraser. I did have a special eraser, white eraser. I don't ever know what happened to it. I just use my regular pink eraser. It works just fine. Now I'm working on my third and final top pumpkin. I gave that little bit more of a pumpkin shape, you want to say. It's not so much of an oval. But you can just see what I'm doing there. Right now I'm just erasing because I want it to sit there on a flat, on top of that flat pumpkin there. Now I'm going to start getting a little bit darker as I go along, and that's mainly so you can see what I'm doing. But now I'm just erasing those little ribs inside there because I'm going to redefine those ribs. But don't worry, you'll be able to see more of what I'm doing. But I need it to look like they're sitting on top of each other. And there we go. Now I'm going to start giving those, making those ribs in the pumpkin. You can decide how many ribs you want to have in your pumpkin. My bottom pumpkin will actually have quite a bit of ribs on it. But you can decide what you want to have on yours. Just trying to make sure that my sides are round. Okay. So I'm just working on that top, doing that little sketching there. Getting the front done. I usually work from the front of the pumpkin and then work my way out. Whenever I do any type of a pumpkin, I work from the front, making that front rib, and then work my way out. And just making sure I'm staying with the curve coming out. And that's what I'll be doing with each one of the pumpkins. So Paint It Fridays, I do this for twice a month on my Facebook group, Watercolor Tutorials and Inspiration. If you aren't a member of my Facebook group, Watercolor Tutorials and Inspiration, I would love for you to join. We do this twice a month. And this is for our September uh, Paint It Fridays. And I also do other like weekly challenges and things like that. And so yeah, so if you're not, if you don't belong, I suggest that you join us on there. I also have a Patreon, and if you haven't checked that out, I'll have links down below where you can find all that. I also have a freebie I'll have down there. So make sure after you're done watching this video, you look down below, click on all the links. You might find something that interests you. All right, now we're working on that bottom pumpkin. So you'll notice that I'm working kind of dark, and it's mainly for the benefit of this tutorial. You will notice once we get through with this part of the tutorial, I will take my eraser. I do kind of go over it a little bit, and I get rid of some of these harsh lines. But it's just so you can see what I'm doing here. Because one thing I never liked when I was watching a tutorial on YouTube, I could never see what they would be drawing. So I want to make sure that you're able to see what I'm drawing. Now you'll notice I get a little crazy on how many ribs my pumpkins have. This is a very wide, fat pumpkin. But you know what? I'm not mad about it, and I like it. All right, so I need to hold it up just to see what my pumpkin looks like, and I'm like, well, he's a pretty wide pumpkin, but that's okay. I'm happy with him. All right, so the vision of these pumpkins are they're stacked on top of each other, and then in between each one, there's going to be like little bits of hay or straw coming out. So I'm just kind of penciling that in there just to see what that's going to look like. Bits of straw like coming out, straw or hay, whatever you want to call it, coming out in between those pumpkins. And plus you want to give that look of shadow in there of where they're setting on top of each other. And then of course the bottom one there where it's setting on the ground. And that's where the straw or hay, like I said, whatever you want to call it, and where that's going to come out. So there are the three pumpkins stacked up on top of each other. I'm just defining those ribs there. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking my eraser and I'm just going over top, because now I don't want all those harsh lines to show through on the painting. So it was mainly for the benefit of the video to see what I was drawing, for you to if you're following along and want to draw along with, that you can see exactly what I'm doing if this is something that you want to copy along with. At any time, the beauty of YouTube is you can stop, you can pause. I do not mind if you copy my work. I do not mind that at all. You have my permission if it's something that you like, if you want to copy it, if you want to recreate this, because after all, uh, when you're said and done with painting it, it is you that painted it with your own hand. I am giving you my permission. I'm stating this on here that you may copy this, you may paint this, because once you've painted it yourself, it becomes yours. I have no problem with that. Okay, so now I'm grabbing my watercolors and I wake up my pan paints with my spray bottle. That's just how I wake them up. I activate them. I wake them up. So let's pick out our colors. And the colors that I'm going to be choosing are, I'm going to take, you'll see here, and I will show you. I always grab a piece of scrap watercolor paper and I make up my palette. Get my water container, my clean rinse water. There's my number 2 round brush. And my paper towel. I always have my paper towel with me. So wet my brush. And let's see, what colors do I choose? And I also spray a little bit in my pans there, in my my palettes there, to do my mixing. So pumpkin number 1. I usually decide at the last minute. So I'm thinking, what is the bottom pumpkin going to be? So we're going to go with burnt sienna. So burnt sienna is going to be pumpkin number 1. I thought that would be a really nice color for pumpkin number 1. So let's see what that looks like on paper. That's going to be pumpkin number 1. Burnt sienna. That's a nice pumpkin color. So if you have burnt sienna, which most standard pan paints should have, that is burnt sienna. That's a pretty standard color. So I think number 2, I think turquoise would be a really fun color for a pumpkin, a turquoise. And I think turquoise is pretty close to a teal. And if you want to make a teal pumpkin, that would be a great color as well, if you want to do teal. I don't really have a teal color pumpkin. So if you have teal, teal would also work well. But I chose turquoise. And then the top one, I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to go with my permanent rose. So I chose my permanent rose. I was thinking, do I want to do an orange? Well, we did the burnt sienna. So you know what? Let's do a permanent rose. So I did permanent rose for the top because I thought those 3 colors would look nice together. So I thought, let's do permanent rose. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of like doing like a gradient there of it to see how, and then I'm going to do the same with the turquoise, do like a gradient to see how they all look when they're, you know, lighter. And I'll do the same thing with the burnt sienna. And you'll see how nicely they all kind of work well together. They'll all work very nicely together. So I'm very happy with my color choices. And I'm thinking, even if you would mix those 2 colors together, they would all work very well together. So yeah, so I'm very happy with those choices. So there we go. We can get started on our stacked pumpkins. And I know you're probably thinking, there are no pink pumpkins out there. Yeah, it doesn't matter. This is just for fun. Alrighty, so let's get our paint area set up. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the wet on wet technique. So what I'm going to do is take clean water, and with my first pumpkin, my bottom pumpkin, I'm going to wet the entire area, and I'm just going to do a wash, a very light wash. And we're going to do that with all 3 pumpkins. We're just going to do a light wash, and we're going to start off with the burnt sienna and just do a very light wash over the entire pumpkin. And we'll do that with all three pumpkins, their colors. So the bottom pumpkin, we'll do a light wet on wet wash of the burnt sienna. And then once we're done with that light wash, while that's drying, then we'll do a clear water wash of the middle pumpkin. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll do the turquoise or whatever. You know, you can actually do whatever color choices that you want on your pumpkins. These are the color choices that I chose. So I'm going to do the turquoise wash in there, of a wet on wet wash in there. And then I'll do the same thing on the top. I'll do a clear water wash and do a wet on wet of a very light coating of the permanent rose on that pumpkin up top. Now there's going to be a lot of steps to this video because this video is not quite 50 minutes long. So yeah, so there's a lot of steps to this, but because there's a lot of layering. All right, so we'll get that pink one, get that wet on wet wash in there. Just a very light wash because you just, like I said, there's a lot of layering on here. And fortunately, since we had the three different pumpkins, our bottom layer has already dried. So now what we're going to do is go back down to our bottom pumpkin, and then we're going to grab some more of that burnt sienna, and then we're going to start working on our, I'm going to call them ribs. So I'm going to mix up more of that burnt sienna, and then I'm going to start going around the edges of the ribs. Pretty much where my pencil marks are. You just see what I'm doing there, just going around each of those ribs. And this is why I wanted a number 2 round, because number 1, the number 2, a round brush has a nice pointed edge, and a number 2 is small enough that I'm not worried about the belly being too large that it interferes with, that it's small enough that I can work in, you know, the smaller spaces in there. I need to get a little bit more paint to load up my tip there a little bit. You want to make sure you're keeping to the round, you know, that you're keeping the integrity of the round of the pumpkin. But I like tracing around the ribs because you want to keep defined. And even going around the edge of the pumpkin. So now I'm going to come back to that first one because now I want to sort of fill in the front part of that pumpkin. But don't get too rambunctious because you do want to keep a little bit of what I call a shine to that pumpkin. So don't fill in the entire area because where you did that first coating of the wash, you want to have a little bit of that the white, not the white, but the light shining through in there. So don't fill in that entire area. Leave a little bit of that showing, and you'll see what I mean here. You see how I'm not painting in that entire area there? Leave some of that showing. Leave some of that show. because you don't want that completely filled in. And the same when you're going around your ribs, leave a little bit of white space in there, or light space. Because if you make it completely all of the same value, the same shade, it's going to look flat. So you want your color value to be your color to be different value, different shade values. That way it gives it, the dimension that it's, number one, that it's round, number two, that the ribs have that it has the rounded shapes, and also that that the light sources are hitting it in different areas. But the main thing is it gives it that rounded look. It makes those ribs look like they're rounded, that it's not flat. But don't worry, we'll be giving it some more. This is just one. This is just the second layer. There's going to be another layer after this. So we'll finish this first layer on this one. Then we'll move up to the turquoise pumpkin, and then we'll do the same thing on the pink pumpkin. Then we'll come back down and we'll do a third layer on the burnt sienna pumpkin, because we'll need to work in layers on these pumpkins. All right, so now we're gonna just let that dry there. Because if you overwork it too much, um, then things start to run together. I just want to darken up those ribs there a little bit. Especially up towards the top parts of the ribs. All right, so clean off my brush and let's start working on the turquoise. Pretty much going to do the same thing on the turquoise. I always get very excited for this time of year. I love I love everything about when we get into the fall and holiday season. It's my favorite time to really get into painting. I love the colors of fall. I love the colors of winter, and when we get into the holiday season, I have so many plans for fall and the Christmas and winter, the holiday season of for the painting, and I'm currently working on an entire course, a free course on making holiday cards, a whole 4 workshop free course coming up that'll be totally free. I cannot wait to get it done. I'm working on that I will be putting out there. That will be I'll have it for free on my Patreon, that I cannot wait to get finished. It'll be a series of 4 different greeting cards that I will be teaching to watercolor. I cannot wait to get that done. Our next Paint It Friday after this, we'll be making a autumn wreath. It'll be a very simple wreath, but yeah, that'll be our next Paint It Friday. But yeah, but so yeah, there's a lot of things coming up. So I'm just so excited. Plus, I have some beginner watercolor series videos too that working on with layering and glazing, which pretty much what we're doing here right now is layering and glazing is what we are actually working on with this is excuse me is we're actually doing some glazing with our layering. So yeah, so you're getting a lot of techniques here in one with this work, with this tutorial. All right, so we're going to clean off our brush, and now we're going to work on our top pumpkin. I was thinking I wouldn't mind doing another pumpkin tutorial. Those we call them popcorn pumpkins. I think that would be fun to do. They have all those little warts on them. I used to work in a home and garden center years ago, and during the fall, this was up north. I live in Florida now, but this was up in Pennsylvania, and we called them popcorn pumpkins. And they had they looked like they had these warts all over them. They were very popular. People loved those things, and I thought they would be fun to paint. But anyway, so yeah, so now we're doing our pink pumpkin, and pretty much the same process. And don't forget, we want to keep that shine there on the front. I call that the shine, where you don't want to cover the entire front of the pumpkin with that same color. You want to keep that shine on there. This pumpkin isn't quite as large, so this one will go pretty quickly. All right. Now we're starting to take some shape here and some color with our pumpkins. The one thing with living down here in Florida, the one thing I don't do, and the one thing I miss about oh, before I get into this little story, I want to show you. I'm going to be using a Van Dyke brown for the stem of the pumpkin. You can use any sort of brown you want to use. I'm just putting a little stem coming out of the pumpkin, the top pumpkin, and then I'll do a couple little curly cues for like vines coming out, just for decoration. Just we'll be giving him a couple layers as well. And you'll see I'll just do a doot doot and a doot doot. Just pretty much a flick and a flick out. There we go. Anyway, living down here where I live in Florida, the only thing I miss with fall is I don't, because we have like a lake behind us, and we do have alligators that roam around. We also have coyotes that have been known to come up and down the street. We have uh, bobcats. And that I miss putting out the corn stalks and uh, the pumpkins and that outside of my house. I'm not going to do that here because we just have so much wildlife that runs around here that I'm not going to attract any animals to my yard. So I do miss decorating outside for fall because I used to live in the country and we did that all the time. I had a cornfield like right behind our house. All right, so now I'm putting on the third layer, a little bit darker this time. Still keeping that shine there in the front, but now this is going to be pretty much that. I'm pretty sure it'll be our last layer. I'm going to do the same thing around. Go around those ribs. I'm not going to fill in completely, but I'm just going to, now I want to preserve, you know, where that light space is there. But now I'm just going to make sure I come down around to the bottom. You see, get down around there in the bottom area. Just go all the way around to each one of those ribs of the pumpkin. Just make sure you're coming down and going around to the bottom of that curve. There you go. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. I'm pretty much covering up my pencil marks that are still showing through there. And then I'll do the same thing over on this side. So yeah, back to what I was saying. I do miss having out decorating for fall. But other than that, I got over it pretty quickly. Because I do like living in Florida. I don't miss what comes after fall. I don't miss the snow and the ice in the winter. I do not miss that at all. I don't miss the cold weather. All right, we're almost done with the bottom pumpkin. Just giving it just a little bit of couple brush strokes there and clean off my brush. And then we'll do the same thing for the turquoise pumpkin. Just make sure we get around all those ribs. Keeping in mind keeping those light areas there. Now remember, if you get too much water or paint on your brush, if you have your paper towel next to you, just dab it on your paper towel. And if you find that you might have painted over, you'll see that I do this up with the pink pumpkin. You can always, if you didn't leave enough white area, you can always lift your paint with a damp clean brush. And I happen to do this with the pink. I'll show you that here in a minute. I got a little too, my brush was a little too wet and my paint spread, and I didn't keep enough white area over here on the left side of the pumpkin, and I needed to lift some paint. So you'll see what I do here. I realized that I was painting and I like, oh, I didn't leave any white space. So see how I'm trying to lift it? Wait, no, wait. I'm just cleaning off my brush, and my finger's in the way. But see how I'm taking my brush, it's clean, and I'm just taking my brush and I'm just trying to lift the paint because I didn't leave enough white area there, and I just lifted the paint up. Okay. Now, all right. Now that just needs to dry a little bit. And then all we need to do yet is we need to add in our straw. And I'm just putting in a little bit more of the burnt sienna. But we need to add in our straw yet, and I need to redefine the stem of the top pumpkin, and I'm just giving a little bit more definition to the bottom pumpkin, and yeah. So the next thing also what I'm going to do is I'm just doing a little bit I'm to each pumpkin I'm just doing a little bit more around the tops of the in each color of the pumpkin where the pencil lines are. Now I'm showing you Payne's Gray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Payne's Gray in between each pumpkin. And that's just more for like a shadow. Even though I'm going to be putting straw in there, I still wanted to put a little bit of Payne's Gray in there. That's just for a shadowing effect. I'm not sure that I really needed to do it because I was putting straw in there, but I did it anyway, just because I just wanted to do it. Just mainly because I just wanted to have that little bit of shadow in there. Payne's Gray is a great color for shadowing. So now what I'm going to show you is, this is yellow ochre. And I'm going to be using that to make straw. So I'm just showing you flicks. I'm just going to do flicks for straw. I'm going to do it in between each pumpkin, and then on the bottom, at the bottom of, on the bottom of the bottom pumpkin. So just watch what I'm going to do. Oh, first what I'm going to do is make sure everything is dry. I'm going to erase any lines that may be showing. So I'm going to feel my entire painting just to make sure it's completely dry. Then I'm going to take my eraser over the entire painting. As long as your painting is dry, you can take your eraser over it. And I am just going to erase anything on there that, any lines that may be showing, because I just don't want any lines showing, and I don't want to paint over anything else. So I'm just going to take my eraser over the entire painting. Sometimes, depending on your paint, sometimes pencil lines will erase, sometimes they don't. Um, it just depends. But anyway, so now I'm just going to make my flicks with my yellow ochre for my straw or hay, whatever you want to call it, in between each pumpkin. And you want your flicks to be of different, going different directions, different heights, different lengths. Um, so we're going to do it in the yellow ochre. And then once we get in between each pumpkin with the yellow ochre, then we're going to go back in and do it again with the Van Dyke brown. Because that way it'll give it a two-tone color. So we go in between each pumpkin, and then we'll do it on the bottom. Now, when you're doing it on the bottom, once we get the top one done, we'll just get some more paint. Just to plan ahead for the bottom, before you get to the bottom, when you're doing it on the bottom, make sure when your hay or straw is coming out, you're doing it at an angle. Don't have it come like straight up and down, because think of how things are laying on the ground. They're coming out at an angle, not like straight out, like coming at an angle. Uh, have it have some come out at an angle. Crisscross at an angle, just different different lengths. Okay. You might even want to have some stray pieces sticking out. All right, so then once that's done, then we're going to switch over and do the same thing again, but we're going to do some in Van Dyke Brown as well. I'm still using the yellow ochre. And now we're using the Van Dyke Brown, because that'll give it a nice two-tone color. And then we are just about done. Once we get this straw done, we just got to go up to the top a little bit, and up at the top where the stem is coming out, that needs to have a little bit of some shade or shadow in there. And we pull oh, and then I'm going to do some splatter on here. I'm going to do splatter of all three of the colors. That's something, some people are so over the splatter look. I did it only because I did a very light splattery look. It's up to you if you want to do that step or not. I did a light splatter. You don't have to. It's up to you. It's your painting. You do what you want to do. But then once that's done, your painting is done. Remember, when you peel tape off of your painter's tape off, you always peel away from you. But yeah, there I do have it filled in. I have the stem part filled in up there in the top. Now we just, if you want to do some splatter, you just do a nice wet, wet your pigment up with some water, splatter it on there. I did all three of the colors. And there we go. Our stacking pumpkins are finished. I hope you enjoyed this Paint It Friday with me. And remember, peel the tape away from you. If you don't, you might rip your paper. That little bottom pumpkin, he's really cracking me up. There's our finished product. So, hey, thanks again. Thanks for watching. So, hey, stay colorful, stay creative, and have fun. Okay, bye-bye.